Hello, fellow Econauts, and welcome back to our show. I'm here with my brother Ben, the Rocketman. Hey, Ben, how are you?
Hey Simon, hey fellow Econauts, how's it going? Today we get inspirational.
The lines between science fiction and science facts are blurrier than you might think, and today, fellow Econauts, we will explore how close they actually are. Ben, maybe we'd start with some technology that is inspired by Star Trek and Star Wars to kick it off.
Yes, I think that's a really good idea. I think the most popular example for how sci-fi has inspired our technology is the flip phone from Star Trek, inspired like the communicators, and then with I think it was Motorola who invented the first flip phone. And now, I mean, nowadays we have the smartphones, but they have more like a typical like screen. But we also get back to these flip smartphones again. Like I think people are very fascinated by that design, and yeah, that comes from Star Trek.
Also, something like video chat, if you really think about it, is something that is inspired by Star Trek. And if I'm not mistaken, even the tablet, right?
Yes, exactly. In Star Trek, especially Star Trek: The Next Generation, they usually don't work on like a keyboard anymore. They usually have some screen that is sort of projected somewhere, and then they can type on that. So this is a very good example. And nowadays, um, screens are everywhere. Even if you go to the mall and you want to find a specific store, there's usually a ginormous touch screen with a map, and then it guides you in the right direction.
And also, another thing that is inspired by Star Trek, to a certain degree, I would say, it's like VR and the holodeck. I think that's kind of the same idea, even it's like a little bit less advanced than the holodeck on Star Trek, I would say.
Yes, exactly. The VR systems we have nowadays with Oculus and HTC and so on, they offer a very immersive experience. It is not quite like the holodeck yet, because the holodeck can sort of like you don't need any extra device. You go into a cube room, and that room can simulate even more space. So it can extend a dimension around you more or less, because you can freely move in there, and it can simulate many more things, also the experience of touch and so on. But it is definitely an inspiration that inspired the VR world. I mean, also having said that, VR, as many people believe, is not so new. I know in the 80s there was already some attempts, but they were, compared to what we have nowadays, very clumsy with like simple polygons.
Let's change franchise for a moment and look into Star Wars and look into R2D2. maybe not this one, but R2D2 and 3CPO, which is like robotics, right? If you really think about it.
Yes, AI and robotics obviously is also vice versa. I think sci-fi has inspired science facts or science technology, and vice versa. But yeah, nowadays with Boston Dynamics, also ChatGPT, Siri, Google, and so on, we have so many devices that are getting more and more like a device where you can actually talk to, and also move. Like imagine these interesting robots, not just the Boston Dynamics dog, but also the attempts to actually having something walking around. Um, I think I don't really have to dig very deep to find lots of pictures in the internet and videos where this happens. Also, there's a very realistic human face already around. I think people have seen that as well. That can also mimic the facial expressions. It learns from interacting with people. So I think that's also very interesting. Of course, there's still no self-awareness as we see in Star Wars. The robots there, they are more. They try more to preserve themselves rather than just serving. So there's certainly a degree of self-awareness embedded in these robots. R2D2 is also a very good example, who followed the Skywalker family pretty much from the get-go. Yeah, so I think that these are really good examples about that. You joked about not talking about about our beloved
I
arc
just
enemy.
wanted to say, because we just touched on this on the Skywalker family. The next topic would of course be artificial limbs, and
Yes,
that is something that is like kind of inspired both ways again, I would say.
yes. And I mean, and also it is actually going hand in hand to start with
Head to
this
head.
fun with the robotics. The better robotics get, the better yeah, mimic or imitation of real movements we get. And obviously, if you are talking about artificial limbs, you as a person who needs these prosthetics, you don't want other people really to see that you wear a prosthetic. So you are very interested in having a prosthetic that looks like real, and even more so, you're also interested in a prosthetic that works like real. So I think we see these days more and more efforts to, especially with the hand, to mimic how the hand is working. And it's not quite there yet, but I think we are getting closer and closer to this point.
Something that is also very fascinating. I mean, we were talking about Star Wars and Star Trek, which are movies and TV shows, but humans have imagined how it will be in the future already 200 years ago. Jules Verne comes to mind with the book. I think it was like to the moon or something. What was the title of that
Uh,
book? Trip
yeah,
to the moon,
to the moon. Yeah.
and and then of course Arthur C. Clarke. Both are, I would say, ahead of their time when it comes to their work, right?
Yes, Arthur C. Clarke, for example, he wrote a short novel where he proposed geostationary satellites long before they actually existed. And nowadays we can't really, GPS is not working um, without geostationary satellites. Weather forecasting is very dependent on those satellites as well, additionally to other remote sensing satellites, of course. But yeah, so they are a backbone of our technologies these days.
I think the last very important technology that we can mention in that show, I mean, there are plenty of other examples, I would say, but let's pick the last one, voice controlled computer, which is something that we can see in Star Wars and Star Trek and other shows as well. And if we think about it, we already have that technology now available and pretty significant for our day-to-day tasks. I'm using Siri every day, and Android has like a similar voice control system. And you can, do that with computers. You can dictate an entire letter if you want to your PC or Macintosh. Let's talk about voice control a little bit.
Yes, I mean, this is a bit of an extension of robotics and AI, of course. And I think the huge difference we now experience with voice control, let's say 20 years ago, which was also possible to, dictate a letter, but it was cumbersome. So you had to be very clear when you talked, and you had to usually you rather had to train yourself than the computer. Nowadays, what comes now to the story as well with ChatGPT, for example, is that the artificial intelligence can interpret what you mean. So instead of dictating the letter word by word, you could, for example, say, "Hey, ChatGPT, please help me to dictate a letter," and then you get actually sort of a response, like a bit of a dialogue between you and your device, which was not possible 20 years ago. And that is something we saw in Star Trek a lot of times, where the computer has been asked certain questions and then can sort of have a response, or even better. And again, that's embedded now in the holodeck. In the holodeck, all the characters are simulated. So obviously, but they sort of simulate even their own feelings and their own thoughts, so that the person who's using the holodeck is immersed in that experience, and can, as a viewer, you cannot really distinguish between what is an artificial character in these holodecks versus their encounter in on a planet. And I mean, I'm aware that all characters are artificial in a sense because it's a show, but just for the immersion.
Let's hook on that technology just a little bit longer, because with that comes, of course, also a translation opportunity, which is something that we see with the universal translator in Star Trek as well. And just like you said, because of AI systems like ChatGPT, we have now the ability to talk to the computer in a way that we have like a dialogue, and we can do that in our language and then maybe ask the computer, hey, can you translate that
Yes.
to another language, right?
Yeah. Often even better than a dictionary translator, because it can also understand to a certain degree the meaning, and also translate it so that the meaning gets translated rather than just the words. That it doesn't work always, of course, but so far it has definitely made lots of good efforts in this direction.
All right, fellow Econauts, we hope we were able to show you the blurry line between science fiction and science fact. And maybe you can leave us a comment with the technology that you find very fascinating. And if you like this episode, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already.
And don't let this blurry line stop you to push the notification bell so you never miss out on a new episode anymore. And don't forget, we already have a huge catalog of episodes, and I invite you to watch them.
And I hope I will see you next time. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
See ya.